My brother abandoned me at 10 and sent me to foster care. Now he shows up 16 years later demanding family. But my girlfriend gave him my address behind my back, and what I did left everyone speechless. I'm 26 years old. I work at a coffee shop downtown. And honestly, I need to get this off my chest because what happened a few months ago basically made me realize that some people are never going to understand why I cut ties with my family. And that's okay. I mean, I don't need them to understand. I guess I should start at the beginning. When I was 10 years old and my mom died in a car accident, I don't remember much about the funeral, honestly. Everything is kind of blurry in my memory. But what I do remember perfectly is sitting in my brother Aaron's living room, waiting for someone to tell me what was going to happen to me, because, I was 10 years old and had just lost the only family that really mattered to me. Aaron was 23 at the time, already married and had his own life together, and Brian was 19. He was in college doing some engineering degree or something like that. Both of them were sitting there on the couch, looking at me like I was a problem they needed to solve, not like their little brother who had just become an orphan. And that's when Aaron said, "I can't take care of you, Caleb. I have my own family now." And Brian nodded and said something like, "I'm in school. I can't. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Like that fixed everything. Like apologizing made being about to be sent into the foster care system less terrifying for a 10-year-old kid. I ended up in a foster home about 3 hours away from where I'd grown up, with a family that already had 4 other foster kids and basically saw us as a monthly government check. They weren't bad. I mean, they didn't abuse us or anything, but they didn't really care about us either, you know what I mean? It was like living in a hotel where nobody knows your name. Aaron called me maybe twice that first year, and Brian maybe once. The calls were always weird and awkward. They'd ask how I was and I'd say fine even though I wasn't, and then there'd be long silences until they made up some excuse to hang up. They promised to call more often, but they never did. By the time I turned 12, the calls had basically stopped completely. I went through 3 different foster homes between ages 10 and 14. The first family moved to another state and didn't want to take me, which, fair enough, I guess. The second one was a total disaster. The foster dad had serious anger issues, and they ended up removing all the kids from there after like 6 months. The third home was where I met the Harrises, and honestly, they saved my life in a lot of ways. Mrs. Harris was an elementary school teacher, and her husband worked in construction. And they had this way of making you feel like they actually cared about you, Not in a fake or exaggerated way, but genuine. I stayed with them from age 14 until I turned 18 and aged out of the system. During those years with the Harrises, I tried not to think much about Aaron and Brian, and it was easier to just act like they didn't exist, like I'd always been alone. I finished high school, not with the best grades in the world, but decent enough, and the Harrises helped me get a part-time job at a grocery store. When I turned 18, I technically wasn't the state's responsibility anymore, and even though the Harrises told me I could stay with them a while longer while I figured out what to do, I felt like I'd already been enough of a burden on them. So I got a roommate, a guy named Josh, who'd also been in foster care, and we rented a small apartment in the not-so-nice part of town. The next 2 years were basically just surviving. I worked double shifts at the store, Josh worked at a restaurant, and we split rent and expenses the best we could. It wasn't glamorous at all, but it was mine. I mean, my life. My decisions. Nobody could send me to another house or tell me they didn't want me. When I was 20, I decided I needed a complete change, like a clean slate. I saved what I could for several months, packed my stuff, which wasn't much, honestly, and moved to a city, about 5 states away without telling anyone except the Harrises because they deserved to know. I didn't tell Aaron or Brian because, why would I? We hadn't talked in years, and it's not like they cared where I was. In the new city, I got a job at this independent coffee shop called Sunrise Coffee. It was owned by this amazing Japanese lady named Mrs. Tanaka, who basically took me under her wing from day one. She taught me everything about coffee, from how to make a perfect espresso to how to read customers and know what they need before they ask for it. I started to feel for the first time in a long time that I was building something real. Not just surviving, but actually living. I made friends, went out on Fridays, had a routine. It was simple, but it was peace. When I was 22, I met Brittany at the coffee shop. She came in every morning to order an almond milk latte and would always stay for like an hour working on her laptop. One day, her battery died, and I lent her a charger. We started chatting, and basically, that's how it all started. She was cute, smart, studying graphic design, and seemed genuinely interested in me. We started dating, and after like 6 months, she asked if I wanted to move in with her because her roommate was getting married, and she needed someone to cover half the rent. I said yes because things were going well between us, and also the rent at her place was better than mine. Living with Brittany was good at first. She had this big, loud family that adopted me basically immediately. Her parents always invited me to Sunday dinners, and her siblings included me in their group chats and all that. It was weird for me because I'd never had that, but it also felt good, like I finally had what everyone else seemed to have naturally. Brittany knew about my past, about Aaron and Brian, about foster care, everything. I told her one night when we'd been dating for like 3 months and she was super understanding, said she got why I didn't want contact with them and that she respected that. Things were going well. I mean, really well. We'd been together almost 2 years. I'd gotten a promotion at the coffee shop to assistant manager. And then one night I'm lying in bed checking my phone before sleep, and I see a message from a number I don't recognize. The message said, "Hey Caleb, it's Aaron. I know it's been a long time, but I'd really like to talk to you. Can we meet?" And I just sat there staring at the screen, feeling like someone had thrown ice water on me. I hadn't talked to Aaron in over 10 years, like literally more than a decade without a single word, and suddenly he shows up with a, "Hey," like nothing happened. My first thought was, how the hell did he get my number? I'd changed phones when I moved to the new city specifically because I wanted to start fresh, and the only number I'd given to anyone from my old life was the Harrises. I didn't respond that night, just turned off my phone and tried to sleep, though I couldn't. The next day, I asked Brittany if she had anything to do with Aaron having my number. She got all defensive immediately, which already gave me a bad feeling, and after like 10 minutes of evasiveness, she finally admitted that yes, Aaron had contacted her through Facebook like a month ago, that he'd explained the whole situation from his perspective, and that she thought it would be good for me to reconnect with my family. That it would be good for me. Like she knew what was good for me better than I did. I asked her why she didn't tell me, and she said she knew I'd get mad, and she thought if Aaron contacted me directly, maybe I'd be more open to listening. I got angry, obviously, but I tried to stay calm and explain to her why what she did was wrong. I told her that information was private, that I had consciously decided not to have contact with Aaron and Brian for very valid reasons, and that she had no right to make that decision for me. Brittany started crying and said she was just trying to help, that her family was the most important thing to her, and she couldn't understand how I could live without trying to fix things with mine. And that's when I realized she never really understood. For her, family was this sacred and inviolable thing, and she couldn't comprehend that for some people, family is the source of their greatest trauma. Aaron kept sending messages. Every 2 or 3 days, another one came. "Hey Caleb, I know you're seeing these messages. Please just give me a chance to explain. Brian and I really want to reconnect with you." I ignored them all, but I felt like my safe space had been invaded, you know. This life I'd built so carefully, where nobody from my past could find me, suddenly had a crack in it. And Brittany kept insisting I should at least hear what Aaron had to say, that maybe they'd changed, that people deserve second chances. After like 2 weeks of this, I told Brittany I needed to talk seriously. I explained that what she did was a massive betrayal of my trust, that it didn't matter what her intentions were, and that I needed space to think. She got really upset and said I was overreacting, that she just wanted me to be happy, and that I was being dramatic. That word bothered me more than it should have, because it was exactly the kind of thing that completely invalidated how I felt. I broke up with her right there. I packed my things that same night, stayed on a coworker's couch for a week, and then found a small studio I could afford with my salary. The breakup was complicated because we worked near each other and had mutual friends, but the most annoying thing was that Brittany's parents showed up at the coffee shop like a week later trying to talk to me. Mrs. Tanaka told them they couldn't stay if they weren't going to order something, and they ordered 2 coffees they didn't touch and sat there for an hour trying to convince me I was making a mistake, that Brittany loved me, that families make mistakes but forgive each other. I just kept working, and eventually they left when they realized I wasn't going to respond. But things got worse because, like 2 weeks later, I'm getting home to my apartment after a long shift, and Aaron is there, standing outside my door. And when I say I felt panic, I mean it. Like my heart started beating super fast and my hands started sweating. I hadn't seen him in person in over 10 years, and there he was, older obviously, with some gray in his temples and more weight on him, but definitely Aaron. He saw me and said, "Caleb, please just give me 5 minutes." And I said, "How did you know where I live?" And he admitted that Brittany had given him the address before we broke up. I told him to leave. He started with this whole story about how he was so sorry, that he'd been young and stupid, that he didn't know how to handle the situation when Mom died, that Brian and he had talked a lot about me over the years, and felt terrible. I just repeated, "Please leave," because I didn't trust my voice to say more without breaking. Aaron said he understood. I was angry, but that family was important, that Mom would have wanted us to be together. All that manipulative garbage. I went into my apartment and closed the door without saying anything else. He stayed outside for like 10 minutes, occasionally knocking and saying my name, but eventually he left. That night I didn't sleep at all. I kept thinking about everything, about being 10 years old and feeling completely abandoned, about the foster homes, about all the times I needed someone and there was nobody. And now, Aaron showed up wanting to play happy family because I guess his conscience was finally bothering him or something. But it didn't work that way. I mean, you can't abandon a child and then show up over a decade later expecting everything to be okay. The damage was already done. The time had already passed. I decided I needed to move again. It wasn't fair that Aaron knew where I lived, that he could show up whenever he wanted. I found another studio in a different part of town, more expensive but worth the peace of mind. I didn't tell anyone my new address, except Mrs. Tanaka, because she was my boss and needed to know, and I specifically asked her not to give it to anyone for any reason. She understood. She always understood, without needing long explanations. Aaron's messages continued for a while, but eventually stopped when he realized I wasn't going to respond. Brittany tried to contact me a couple times too, but I blocked her on everything. It was hard because I genuinely thought she was different, that she was someone I could build something real with. But it turned out she prioritized her own ideas about what family should be over my actual well-being. About 2 months after all that drama, I reconnected with Cameron, a guy I'd known in one of my foster homes when we were teenagers. We ran into each other by chance at the supermarket, and he recognized me first. We went for some beers and spent hours catching up. Cameron had also been in the system, had also had family that basically abandoned him, and understood in a way that Brittany never could. He didn't try to convince me to forgive anyone, or tell me I was being too harsh. He just listened and nodded and said, "Yeah, man, that sucks." Cameron and I started hanging out regularly, and through him I met other people who'd been through similar things. It wasn't like a formal support group or anything, just people who understood each other. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had something close to a real family, people I chose and who chose me back, not just people connected to me by accident of birth. Now I'm 26, still working at Sunrise Coffee, and honestly, I love it. Mrs. Tanaka has been teaching me the business side too, how to handle inventory, suppliers, all that administrative stuff, because she says someday I'm going to open my own place and I need to know these things. I'm saving for that, little by little, and I feel like it's a real goal I can reach. Cameron is considering coming in with me as a partner when the time comes, which would be amazing. As for Aaron and Brian, I haven't heard anything from them in months, and that's fine. I don't hate them, honestly. I just don't have space for them in my life. They made their decision when I was 10 years old, and I made mine now. Some people probably think I'm cruel or that I'm being resentful, but I don't owe my brothers anything just because we share blood. They weren't there when I needed them, and I'm not going to pretend that doesn't matter just because it's convenient for them to reconnect now. Last week, a regular customer at the coffee shop asked me if I had family in the city. I told him yes, that I have friends who are like brothers to me, that I have Mrs. Tanaka, who's like an aunt, that I have Cameron who understands my story better than anyone. He smiled and said, "That sounded nice," and he was right. It is nice. It's not the perfect nuclear family that society says you should have, but it's real and it's chosen, and that makes it better in a lot of ways. And at the end of the day, that's enough. More than enough.